So Dave, any advice for instructional designers who want to get really good at designing in Canvas LMS or any LMS for that matter?
Um, that's a really good question. First of all, if your institution has training for their LMS, do the training, do it more than once. I would also say try to see what functions get used the most. Canvas has a lot of cool functions that are kind of ancillary functions, not the main ones that get used over and over again. Start with the fundamentals and understand what the how the settings work for any one course. That's really important. Dates, calendars, that's a really important one, and understanding how modules work and which pages have version control and which don't. Those are really, really important things. So pages have version control, assignments tend not to. I don't know why, even because assignments are the most important ones. But as far as designing goes, so that's all like the nuts and bolts of Canvas. Kind of learn the tool, learn how to use the tool properly, learn what the functions are. But as far as designing goes, it kind of goes beyond instructional design, and you get more into like conventions around some UX design and just content design in general. So I would say you learn some basic HTML. You don't have to be an HTML pro, like just, or even know what functions you want the page to do, like make a grid or a tab or something like that. Have those snippets somewhere on hand. You can go to like W3 Schools or whatever and find snippets, ready-made code for you, where you can just plug it in and then you can plug your content in and it'll design it nice and neat without you having to rip your hair out trying to figure it out. And then kind of give yourself design challenges around that. So, you kind of learn in the flow of work. If someone tasks you with making something in an LMS, even if you don't know how to do it, say you know how to do it and then go and figure that out, because now you have motivation. You're going to figure it out eventually. It's rough, but I think it's a good method of learning in the flow of work. And then other conventions around just like designing LMS pages, you have to think of like text, for example, like keeping it brief, not using the whole width of the text line because it makes it not very readable. You got to shorten that down. It can't be extraneously long. Got to shorten it up. Brevity is the overriding quality when you're writing LMS pages. Navigation, try not to have your navigation all over the place. You have a left-hand navigation, that should be good enough. You shouldn't be having like all these links for different navigation in different pages, because it can get confusing and it can break when you like import or export a course.
Gotcha.
Hyperlinks, if you have a link to an outside source, like a magazine article or something like that, if you can get the PDF for it and store it in Canvas, do that. When you have links that go to outside sites, you create the first step or the first trip into the rabbit hole of the internet. So you will be focused on something. You're in that learning management system. You're doing your work. Here comes external link. You click it, you read this thing, and those things spark ideas in your head that lead you down different paths in the internet. That's what's kind of cool about the internet. You can go all over the place. It leads you down these different paths. You have access to everything. And then before you know it, 2 hours have passed and you totally forgot that you were in the LMS in the first place. So links kind of make you procrastinate a little bit. They throw you off track. So if you can keep everything, that information housed within the LMS, that's a good rule to go by. Also, on to that effect, if it can be done in the LMS, do it in the LMS. Okay. So there's lots of ed tech tools out there that do awesome things. They might not be necessary because you can do in Canvas what other tools can do just as easily. So for example, when we were talking earlier about the like kind of learning object quizzes that you made, that performs the function of a whole host of LTIs, learning technology integrations, or edtech tools. Mm-hmm. You did that in-house. It's transferable. You don't need to do back-end stuff. It works. It's all connected to the API, all that stuff. So I would say that as well. And then like the structure of pages, use good UX, use headings, chunk things out, especially when it comes to text. Try not to have too much extraneous cognitive load. So anything that's really decorative, you don't need, so don't use it. It might look like the page is more fancy, but it doesn't do much. Like fancy banners, use a heading. Like they're nice. And I would say also in relationship to that, you see a lot of banners that are like fun. I would say treat your learners their age.
Sure.
If they are not in middle school, don't put up like a middle school banner. Oh, it's fun coming into the classroom. These are adults you're dealing with. If they feel a little bit patronized and that stuff matters. It really, really, really does matter. I think that just off the top of my head, in the LMS,
that's good
those
stuff.
are kind of conventions that I would say kind of stick to. And apart from designing activities or assessments.
Sure. That's gold, Dave. Those are gold. I want to ask you one question about one of them, though. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on. Those are all great pieces of advice. In terms of the snippets, if I guess there's a couple ways to do it. If you do have access to, say, your LMS, like you could build course shells and things, would you consider taking all those snippets and building pages in a course shell for yourself? Like every page one page might be the code for a table of contents. One page might be the code for an accordion type of thing. Would you take all the things that you can do in Canvas and put them in a course for yourself so it's easier to use them? How do you access these snippets of code when you want to build a course?
So I originally kind of came up with the stuff that I wanted LMS to look like, and I didn't know any HTML before this. And then I went and found what the HTML was for that, and I copy and pasted that into like a Google Doc.
Okay.
And so I would continually kind of go back to that doc as I was building pages. And then I just figured, okay, I'm basically building out a template. So what I did was I just created a Canvas page in my own personal sandbox site that I have. And it's just a module of all of those things.
Fantastic.
So I can go and I can click in Canvas and I can just copy it and move it over. Or I can import that little module into any course that I'm developing. So that way I don't have to click back and forth between courses or anything. Everything's just right there. Or I can throw it up on a tab, and then I can delete it from the course when I'm finished designing it. But the things that you use the most, I find, are things to economize space.
Right.
So I would say grids, tabs, although they're not very accessible, I would go with grids. And grids are very, very mobily responsive. So if you have like grid columns like 2 or 3, and you have content in each one of those boxes on your desktop, if they open it on a mobile device, it'll respond to mobile and everything will stack in order without like large spaces or anything. Very, very useful. You can also use accordions, although accordions tend to break. And click and reveals aren't, the best cognitively or pedagogically.
Right. And not only break, but you might be handing this off to a teacher who is then going to have to do the editing. So be careful with how complex you make the pages, right?
Yeah, if it breaks easily, don't use it unless you have a pretty seasoned faculty member.
Gotcha.
Who's not going to break stuff.
Okay.
And even the best, I break stuff all the time.
Sure.
That's how you learn things. You gotta break stuff sometimes and then figure out how and why you broke it and how not to do that again and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So I guess a big consideration is, are you handing off a course that doesn't really have to be edited, or are you handing off a course that has to do a lot of editing by a teacher? One of those considerations,
Yeah. Like Don Norman said that good design is invisible. And that's kind of what you want with your LMS pages. You don't want them to look like you have to understand the design in order to operate it. It should just be seamless. People should look at it and intuitively go where they're supposed to go. You know, there's you use familiarity. Try not to be too novel. Use familiarity, things that people always see on the internet, specific types of icons. You don't have to make new ones for next. Just use an arrow or whatever you need to do, right?
Gotcha.
Like um simple.
Gotcha.
Simplicity, and use good design principles on top and in combination with your instructional design principles.
Maybe for this post, Dave, because that was all gold. Maybe we'll get together when I make the post and we'll put in some good resources. The beginnings of UX and good design, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
books that you like, and some resources and web pages that people could go to kind of get them if they're getting started, to get them started in
Yeah,
not just learning Canvas, but also learning Canvas and learning about design, and all that has to come together. So gold, Dave. Thanks. Gold.
cool.
Thank you for that.